Sorry. Small things like this really irritating. Okay, all right, there we are. I'll be recording. Yes, we are recording. So anyone who's just joined us, I'm not actually that irritated. It's fine. Okay, so I'm importing my weather component from this file. So I'm going to go ahead and make it. I'm going to bring this logic code with me because that's what I've extracted from here. And I'm going to create my folder. Conventionally named source. Again, you can call it whatever you want, but everyone expects there to be a source folder for JavaScript work. And let's create what I called, which is a weather component. That's what this stuff's going to be in here. That's what I need it to happen. Let me keep that on the right-hand side. No, this one on the right-hand side, so we can see. So in my index.js, I'm going to import my weather component, and all I need to do is run new, and it takes one argument. So let's write a class, class weather component. Now at this point, or beforehand in the design of this, would be when you can start unit testing this class. And this is good because now we'll have better test coverage, because at the moment you probably don't really have any specific tests for this part. We only have feature tests. So given that we've extracted a class, and we'll see some of the behavior of this, we can now test it at a unit test level, which is useful. Okay, as much as I like to, what was the phrase? Bang on about testing. Yeah. Okay. Constructor. So as you see on the right-hand side, I'm using this with an argument to my constructor method. So I'm going to pass in, I guess, whatever it is, an element, store it here. And I need to think about what I need to do in this method. I'm just running new, so I need to run a method directly from my constructor, which is going to be something like, I don't know, let's say render. This is quite a common pattern for components to have a render method, and it's definitely how React does it. When we move on to React next week, you'll see this. So let's write it. What do I need to do here? Well, I need to do this. And I need to use rather than, and that's this little component done. Okay, so as you can see on the right-hand side, I import the component, I inject where it needs to go using the app element. I grab this from the page and I say, okay, weather component, you're now responsible for figuring out what is on this element. And so I call new with the element, and on the left-hand side, the element comes in, gets stored on the property. And then I call straight away this render function, which grabs the data from the API, all the stuff you've already done before, and then updates that element HTML. So I've now successfully encapsulated the responsibility for that component in its own class, rather than hanging out here on this index.js file. A couple of small things I have to do to make this work. And now, because I'm using imports now, I need to go back to my HTML page and make sure my browser understands what I need to do with it. That should be about it. No results found for Matthew Fanning. Sorry, Matt. Okay. So let's have a look. Let's see if things are still working as expected. I'm going to go and I could do, which was this one? This is my shoe server. Let's run it again. Nothing should have changed. There might be some errors that we'll debug, but otherwise, let's have a look. So there are some errors. Let's have a look. Requested module does not provide an export. Oh, because I haven't exported it. That's another thing I forgot. Oh, let's export it. That might be useful. Cool. So we're back to a working application. In a cleaner style, because I'm using a class that has some state and updates itself, grabs some data and then updates itself. Okay. So I wanted to demonstrate this because this is something where I want to push towards. Give you, and I'll talk a little bit about this afternoon about what I want you to do over the weekend if you have some time, all optional stuff. But next week we'll be using this pattern and moving on to using React, which approaches JavaScript like this. So thoughts and questions as you watch me do that. What stood out to you?
So you know when you create the render function or method for web component class.
Yep.
I know you want to create a new instance of the class like in index.js, but I thought, I'm not sure if I'm recalling correctly, that usually we wouldn't put methods in the constructor.
Mm-hmm.
And instead we would create the object and then put .render. Is there a reason why you just want to put new web component?
Yeah, it's a really great question. So I could just do it like this. Yeah. Yep, that would work. I don't really care about the state there. So if I needed to use this again, web component, that would give me a little bit more justification here. What I really want to do is just find a way to encapsulate behavior and then execute it straight away. So I need to come back to it. I would probably store it as in a variable, but yeah, I don't mind either approach. The reason I did it is because I don't really care about storing in state. I just wanted to run, but have a neat encapsulation using a class. Yeah. Good question. That was a good question. Nice observation. Any other thoughts or observations?
You're going to do this, are you going to have different files for each rendering?
Yeah, think of it in the same way that when we've been doing it, we create a file for all new classes, we create a file for components. So then the question becomes, well, what is a component? And then you have to go back to domain model to figure out how can you split the page up into different components. And that's your choice. Again, back to your domain model, that object-oriented design, how do you model your domain? What is a web component as compared to a page component or a button component or a dashboard component? And maybe you'll have a nested hierarchy where a component has child components and things like that. And we'll get onto that when we move on to React next week. I know. But in the same way we've been injecting class into other classes, we can do the same thing here.
So if we were doing it for the thermostat, we'd have 8 different files for the 8 different components, or I can't remember how many there are.
Or you might even spot a way to reuse some of your code. So if you have multiple buttons, you might only need one file for a button and reuse it in multiple places. Yeah. So you might have like a dashboard component comprised of multiple button components, but they all come from one place because they're all the same kind of thing. You just have different text with them and that kind of thing. In the same way that you could also add more HTML into this string. So you could do something like give this a H1 heading, because at the end of the day, it's all just text that your browser then can render. So I don't think I have to keep rerunning that, but anyway. Oh, it's now 14. That hasn't updated. Hold on. There you are. So you can see the browser renders that as an H1 heading now, because I've added more data into my component about how it should look. And that's the reason we've taken it away from this HTML page and say all you're responsible for is having this one simple like holder element that we inject into it all of our actual app. The index.js file imports all your components and then adds them to the page. And all your components live in a folder somewhere.
So if we don't specify like H1, what's it default to?
Nothing. Still gets rendered. The browser is quite friendly in how it just ignores those things. Any other thoughts or questions?
Yeah, so you know you've moved the weather element into its own class now.
Mm-hmm.
Do you we were doing those like stub tests earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So would you now do that on that class and not do it on the index.js, or do you do it on both? How does that then work?
Don't think about it in terms of files. Don't think in terms of tests. You'd still stub it for your feature test, and you still stub it for your unit test. Yeah, but your assertion won't be on the page for this unit test. The assertion will be on the render method because it's a unit test. Yeah. So your assertion for this might be something like, fixtures. Given that I've now, we have to name them better, put them into better folders. At some point, you should put this into a features folder and a units folder. So we call this a weather unit spec. Put this in a unit folder, don't call it a unit test like that. I just can't be bothered. And then where's it going to go? Maybe something like that. We'll have a look. It renders. I can't think so much about naming sometimes. And here we'll have to do something like, let's use const whether component is a new weather component, but I need to pass an argument. So let's do, let's fake it for the moment. And I want to call the render method, and I expect this. No, I expect element dot inner HTML equals. Was that? Is that how Cypress does it? Equals like this. Equals. Anyone can help? Is it equals or equal?
It's 2.equal.
It's Cypress, not Jasmine. Let's have a look.
I think it's just equal.
Singular, plural.
Singular.
Thank you. Expect to equal, and then whatever I want it to, this thing. In which case, what's the fixed number? Is it, my test is at 9 Celsius? It might look something like this. Again, the point of this method here is to update this property of the element, and so that's why I should test. The render method gets data and then updates the property in HTML of the element to be this string. So my spec, I've replicated that, create a fake object, and just know that it will change its property. So I assert that this property is now equal to this. Need to also clearly need to do that as well. All right, so this is going to be a unit test, which is testing the render method compared to the feature spec, which tests that from a user's point of view, they visit the page and they see text on the page. All right, the difference between these two things is important. This is a feature test. You don't care about classes and methods. You just care about visiting pages, interacting with the page, and seeing things that happen. Whereas the unit test is, let's actually create the object, call a method, and then assert on a result.
Quick question about components. Would
Yeah.
they generally only call their render method, or would it potentially be able to have multiple methods, and then if you pass something into constructor, it will call that thing?
In general, or for what we're doing? Because what we're doing is a very simplified approach. When we move on to React, you'll see there's a more mature framework, what we call lifecycle methods. Like every component will have a certain set of methods, like an interface to a component. So okay, yeah. Is your question based on like what we're doing right now, or like components in general?
Kind of a bit of both, like components in general, but also say like have a button component where you, when you construct it, you in the constructor you pass in up, and then it runs the up method.
Yeah, so in the same way that we have a render method here, if you have a render method with like a button or like some kind of element that has a function that you run when you click on it, you can add more methods here for things that happen when you click on it. So you can add a bunch of new methods here, but if you want to make sure that there's a standard approach or component, then you should all have some method that's the same that updates the element. I think that answers it at the moment. And I want to keep this simple at the moment because the way that we're writing this needs to be simple, because otherwise it will quickly get out of hand before we move on to React, which will hide a bunch of this stuff underneath the hood and allow us to essentially write this much more easily. If we start to sort of like try to actually write a component framework, it'll become a little bit more difficult for us. So keep it simple, like I'm trying to do here. And the reason I want to show you the component approach is because I want you to have in your heads the reason for the encapsulation, moving from logic out of the HTML page and the JavaScript page into components. And that's the most useful thing you can be thinking about before next week when we move on to React. All right. The specific implementation of the component spec, not that important, but can be fun if you want to go ahead and try and design your own over the weekend.
Perfect.
Here's here's something for you to explore about a set of methods that components might have. So go have a look at it. Any other thoughts or questions? It's getting warmer. It's supposed to have 9 degrees. We've risen 5 degrees today. Look at that. Okay, pairing time. Pairing time. Pairing on thermostat. Enjoy, have fun. You have a couple hours before let's meet at 5 o'clock. Let's make sure you have 2 hours. Let's meet at 5:15. All right, 5:15, and then we'll finish just before 6 o'clock. Make sure we all have some time to switch off. Cool. All right, I will let you all go and have fun pairing this afternoon, and see you at 5:15. Bye bye.